Fanning, I want to thank you for your service, and it's great to have your mom here. I wanted to ask you about the size of the Army and what your viewpoint is on that. As you know, we are drawing down the end strength of the Army to 450,000 by 2018, and as a result of that, we're actually seeing about a huge number of involuntary separations of people who have served multiple deployments, who have served the country admirably, which to me is to get a pink slip after you've come home, served our country is pretty appalling. But I want to ask you two questions. Number one, do you think that we have the right size Army, and what about the reduction down to 450? And then secondly, when General Milley was before our committee in July, he said that only about 30% of Army brigades are at acceptable levels of combat readiness, and he noted that that number should be between 60 and 70%. So what do you view the biggest readiness problem? Has it improved since July, and where are we?
Okay, I'll start with readiness. It has not improved markedly since July. It's still about a third of our BCTs that are ready. The Army would define as decisive action, ready for a big, large land fight that we might face against Russia or North Korea or what have you. The Army has in plan ways to get there, but there are many impediments in place. The demand on the force, the size that it is, makes it difficult to keep it trained, to keep it going through those training rotations. The friction the Army...
And when you shrink the Army, you get the dwell to deploy ratio is very difficult to meet.
Absolutely, because the demand's not shrinking at the same rate.
So should we be pushing for more resources for a larger Army, given the threats that we face? Is that something that you would advocate for?
I do worry about the size of the Army today. When we were directed to go down to 450 in the active component by the QDR, General Odierno testified that this was with risk. I know he said this quite a bit. I was sitting across the table in the Air Force seat. And General Milley has recently testified we can meet the combatant commander's requirements at 450, but the risk is increasing, and I don't see that vector changing. 2 years ago, when we targeted 450, we didn't have ISIL, we didn't have Russia as provocative as it is. So I am concerned. It's preventing us from doing a number of things we want to do to the Army to make it readier and to keep it whole. I look forward, by the way, I know that you directed the chairman of the Joint Chiefs do a force assessment on the Army specifically by the end of next month, which I think will be very telling.
Good. I look forward to receiving that, and especially as we look at this readiness issue, which is fundamental to the strength of our force and obviously how we treat our men and women in uniform. I think this needs to be a priority for you in this position. I also wanted to follow up on an issue that we have seen in New Hampshire with our Guard, and that's military construction. In fact, in New Hampshire, the condition of our readiness centers in New Hampshire is unacceptable. According to the Army National Guard Readiness Center Transformation Plan, Master Plan, if you look at where we are, we're ranked 51 out of 54 states and territories evaluated nationwide with our infrastructure. In total, the New Hampshire Army National Guard, if you look at our readiness centers, all except one are rated poor or failing. And so, in fact, if you look at our Manchester Readiness Center, it was constructed from 1938 to 1940, doesn't comply with building codes, life, health, safety, or any anti-terrorism force protection standards. So I would ask you in the upcoming budget request, I hope the Army doesn't continue to postpone its request for funding for the New Hampshire Army National Guard vehicle maintenance shops in Hooksett and Rochester, as well as our readiness centers in Pembroke and Concord, because they're just in, we're just in a very deplorable situation. You think about we're 51 out of 54. And I hope, if confirmed, that you'll commit to examining the allocation of military construction dollars, not only between the active and reserve component, but also the allocation among the state Army National Guards to ensure that the Army is prioritizing what our Guard needs, as well. As we know, this is a total force situation. We could not have fought in Afghanistan, Iraq, or what we're doing against ISIS without the Guard.
I absolutely will. And I think we need to take a fundamental look at the total number of dollars as well. This is a place where across all of the military departments where I worked, we take the greatest risk. MILCON, facility sustainment, to the point, because that includes ranges, testing facilities, that it's become in and of itself a readiness issue.
Thank you very much.